All right, let's just dive right in. We're going to tackle one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most misunderstood symbols in all of ancient literature, the lake of fire. For centuries, this image has represented the ultimate terror. But what if we've been reading the map all wrong? What if the original writers had something completely different in mind? Right off the bat, here's the central question. On one hand, you've got the popular idea, eternal conscious torment. It's terrifying. But on the other hand, there's this radical, much older interpretation rooted in ancient temple rituals, divine purification. Could a symbol of judgment actually be about, well, about making things right, not just endless punishment? That's the puzzle we're digging into today. The very first clue that we're dealing with a symbol and not some literal place actually comes from the ancient texts themselves. Because when you look closely, you find that different writers describe this final judgment in, well, surprisingly different ways. Okay, so here's the famous one. This is from the book of Revelation. The author, John, has this vision of a massive lake of fire. This is the image that has captured, and let's be honest, terrified the human imagination for millennia. It's a static, all-consuming body of fire. Just hold that thought, because another writer saw something very, very different. Now, contrast that with this. The prophet Daniel, describing the same scene of final judgment, sees a river of fire. See the difference? It's dynamic, it's moving, it's flowing from the divine throne. This isn't a destination you get tossed into, it's an active force coming from a source. So which one is it? A static lake you're thrown into, or a dynamic river flowing out? The contradiction itself is a huge hint, isn't it? It tells us these writers are using powerful symbolic imagery to describe a process, not a physical zip code. So to solve this puzzle, we have to dig into the world they actually lived in. To really understand the fire symbol, we have to first look at the real-world places that might have inspired this kind of talk. And the most famous one, by far, is a place called Gehenna. Gehenna wasn't some mythical underworld. Nope, it was the city dump for ancient Jerusalem. It was a very real, very smelly, and constantly smoldering ravine right outside the city walls. This is where they threw the trash, the refuse, and even the carcasses of dishonored criminals. The fire and the worms, they were a constant reality there. Now, this is really important. When Jesus mentions Gehenna, he's actually quoting this older text from the prophet Isaiah. And notice the crucial detail here. People go out to look upon what? The corpses, the dead bodies. It's a scene of finality and shame, not a scene of living people being tortured. Death is the punishment. So while Gehenna gives us some of the imagery, the fire, the shame, the idea of being outside, it's not the source for the lake of fire. I mean, the geography's wrong. It's a valley, not a lake. And more importantly, the symbolism doesn't quite fit the grand cosmic vision John is painting in Revelation. John was focused on something else entirely, the rituals of the ancient temple. And this is where we get to the heart of the matter. The writer of Revelation, John, was steeped in the world of the temple. Some historical sources even suggest he might have been a priest himself. His entire vision is just built on temple symbolism, and that is where we find the true source of the lake of fire. So, meet the laver. This was a massive bronze basin that stood in the temple courtyard. Before any priest could enter the sacred spaces or do his job, he had to stop here. Its whole purpose was about one thing: cleansing, washing, and ritual purification. The process was simple, but it was profoundly important. You approach the laver, you wash yourself, and only then, once you've been purified, could you enter the presence of the holy. The laver was literally the gateway to consecration. It's a symbol of a necessary cleansing process. Okay, here is the crucial symbolic leap. You have to catch this. In the physical temple, the laver held water. I mean, we humans can't exactly bathe in fire, right? But the water was just a stand-in, a physical symbol for a heavenly reality. It symbolized something way more intense: molten gold, which in ancient thought was the ultimate symbol of purity and of the divine nature itself. And here is the smoking gun, the direct connection. In the huge temple built by Solomon, this massive basin wasn't just called a laver, its official name was the molten sea. Now just think about it for a second. What does perfectly refined molten metal look like? John's vision calls it a sea of glass mixed with fire. The temple's molten sea is the symbolic origin of John's fiery sea. It's hiding in plain sight.
But what about the brimstone? I know what you're thinking. That's the word that seems to seal the deal for torture, right? A lake of fire and brimstone sounds pretty definitive. Well, yeah, but only if we misunderstand what brimstone actually meant to a first-century reader.
So, brimstone is simply an Old English word for the element sulfur. That's the straightforward scientific definition. But words have cultural meanings that go way beyond what you find in a dictionary. Now, this is just amazing. The original Greek word that was used in the text is theon. Theon means sulfur, but its root is theo, which is the Greek word for God. So, to a Greek-speaking person in the first century, theon didn't just mean sulfur. Its primary association was divine substance, or that which belongs to God. And just look at how they used it. The ancient world didn't associate sulfur with torture. They associated it with purification. They would literally burn theon to fumigate and cleanse their temples, to ritually purify people, and to consecrate objects to their gods. So when you add brimstone or theon to the fire, you're not adding an element of torture. You're adding the idea of divinity and consecration. It was a fire of divine purification. So let's put all these pieces together. The imagery isn't from some pagan underworld or a city garbage dump. It's from the very heart of the Hebrew temple. It's not about retribution, it's about refinement. Let's just put the two views side by side. The common misconception sees literal fire in a physical location for the purpose of torture. But when we understand the temple symbolism, we see a metaphorical fire that represents the divine presence. It's not a place, it's a process. And the goal isn't torture, but purification, made holy by brimstone, the divine substance itself. So the crucial point is this. The lake of fire is a powerful metaphor. It takes the most sacred cleansing ritual known to its audience, the priest washing in the molten sea before entering God's presence, and it just expands it to a cosmic scale. It's the ultimate refiner's fire, meant to purify and make all things right. And this changes everything. It completely reframes the very concept of divine justice. It shifts the focus away from a model of endless retribution toward one of ultimate restoration and purification. The goal isn't to punish forever, but to cleanse, to refine, and to ultimately make all things fit for the divine presence. And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. If an image this terrifying, this central to our ideas of judgment, has been so profoundly misunderstood just by overlooking its original context, what other ancient concepts might we be reading through a completely distorted lens? What else is just waiting to be re-examined?